So last time we met, we were talking about the very, very basics of a general inbound flow. So really just like within Genesys Cloud, how do we set up a regular call flow, inbound call flow? The very basics that we touched in that video were really just getting it set up and some of my preferences for that. So getting rid of the menu, which is always going to be your default action. I like to go ahead and move the menu out of there and put in a task. That way I can do a little preliminary thing. Sometimes I even just like to set attributes before moving on. We talked about a few of those attributes being task and flow. And there's a few others that might be seen in like a common module such as common dot. That is another one. But today we're going to move beyond just like publishing a flow, getting it set up. I'm going to move a little bit more into some of the other sound options. A lot of times the most important thing, of course, about phone calls is what you hear when you do call in. So for me today, we're going to take a look at switching that up. Prompt, usually in these days, in the I guess, AI world, we kind of think of a prompt being something that's, something you put into ChatGPT or something like that. It has nothing to do with that in this context. It's just like when you get on a phone, you have the little hashtag. For a lot of people and for many earlier time, that was just the pound sign. And so in the call center world, it's the same kind of thing. We still refer to that being the pound symbol on the phone. And so there's a little bit of translation here, difference of like your, I guess, lexicon, being that a prompt today, when we refer to it as not prompt for AI, is going to be a prompt for hearing something. Generally, a prompt is going to be, individual files that we then kind of refer to as an object within Genesys Cloud. In the old days, you'd really just throw a bunch of WAV files into a folder on a server, and then the programming would just reference what file name it needed. And now it's a little bit better in cloud to where we can manage things based on an actual object. So the WAV files get imported, become a object of the system, and then we can do a lot more with them as far as different languages, and I'll show that in a sec. So let's go ahead and get started. So I'll go ahead and we'll move into our Genesys Cloud view here. And I've gone ahead and gone into the architect area. I can get to off of the main menu that I showed last week and logging in. We created this last week. We did a couple versions of it. So now we're going to get rolling with a new version. So it's going to load up. And first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and edit it. That's going to go ahead and move it out of the published state. And we still have version 2 that's out there live. So we don't have to worry about calls coming in. They're still rolling through version 2. We're just kind of operating in a version 3 that's checked out to us. If we want to save this, we'd check it in before we'd want to publish it. So this can be very nice when you're in a Genesys Cloud system that is like your your actual production org. Sometimes in Genesys Cloud environments, you might actually get an org for your dev or lower systems. In this scenario, we're just going to act like we're in the prod system. So version control can be very helpful for us. Okay, last time we set up a couple different attributes, and then right down here we did this play audio step. Now, the way in which I did this was I just added it in as a play audio step, so let's do that again, just to kind of get where we were. So here, and then audio, play audio, immediately goes to an error because there's nothing there. But over here on the right, I can immediately just start typing things. So, thanks for calling, just like that. Now, that's easy, and when I click away, it's kind of nice because it shows it right there. Thanks for calling. But really, most of the time, you're going to need to dig down more into this. So TTS is not always going to work, not always the best engine. There are going to be other engines out there you can use for TTS, but the out-of-the-box one isn't fantastic. So what do we talk about when we start to get into the kind of the next layer of playing audio? And that is going to involve this little button off here to the right of the audio area. It's going to bring up this text-to-speech area where we do kind of see that as the object we're working with. It kind of defaulted to all of this right off the gate, but we don't want to do this. So let's go ahead and delete it. It's gone. You see, we are very sure, and it's just gone. So getting a little bit of a warning and an error again because we don't really have anything happening in this play audio tool step, so we're going to need to change that. We do have a lot of options up here. For the most part, you're just going to go right to add prompt. Some of these other ones you might get into. I talked a little bit about blank audio and that we do add that in to sometimes Actions have audio play steps that we need to just kind of fill. The initial greeting is one of those, as well as transfers. So transfers to like ACD or transfers to an external party, things like that. There's generally like audio fields for that. And a lot of times I just add blank audio because you don't always need to tell people you're being transferred. You can just kind of let that happen. So add blank audio is helpful there. Expressions, when we get really, that's kind of more the advanced, getting into playing different prompts based off of other parameters we might have at the same spot. So for the case of right now, we're just going to do add prompt. Okay, so it's going to bring this up, and I can go ahead and like search in here for things. And now there is some system ones in here, kind of some collect digits, verify. A lot of these are already tied to kind of out of the box, like collect input type tool steps. And they're all kind of in this system category. So system dot name prompt. We're not going to use any of those. We're going to go ahead and create ourselves a new one. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is go over here, and we're going to say add new prompt. It's going to bring up this create prompt screen. I'm going to name it something fun. So let's name it, I don't know. Let's do just main greeting. Now, what you'll notice is I just typed a space there and it went backwards. So space, and I can't do it. It's because in this field, it's actually allowing, it actually has correction in it built in to where it's not going to allow spaces. So you can do underscores. So we can do main greeting like that. And then other characters, but again, spaces, not going to work. It's just going to throw you back to the end of your last word. Okay, description we can though. We'll just say this is the main greeting for our general flow. All right, so go ahead and create this. And now we have some general description, just kind of like speech to text here, and then also the add audio. So I'm going to go ahead and type in here as well. Welcome to our flow. So this is essentially we've gotten so far as back to where we were, but we've created a prompt object allowing us to manage this in a much better way. So I can go ahead and hit add audio. I can record from the browser or upload. Let's do record from browser. We go ahead and start recording. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Stop. And then we've got it. So I'm just go ahead and upload it. And then boom, now we actually have a WAV file that like we've recorded on here. Now it's not really in WAV form anymore. It's just really acting as a resource onto this prompt. But now we do have that attached and ready to go. So this text to speech now becomes irrelevant. Only in the case that like maybe there's an issue with the prompt playing or something like that, it will fall back to the text to speech. Or maybe there is just some kind of odd sequence where maybe we do kind of need text to speech as a backup, but very much think of it as a backup at this point. So I'm going to hit OK. And then now we see it as prompt main greeting in here. So we can go ahead and close, and now it's there. And so we have it referenced here. If we go ahead and click on it, it's now going to show as kind of like the main prompt area, and we can find its consuming flows. So now that it's its own object in the system, it might be able to be used elsewhere in any completely different flows. So that can be great, that we don't have to like keep reinventing the wheel with prompts as we go into and build a whole nother flow. So let's see that too, just to get back to as a reference of that. So let me save this. I'm going to go ahead and just click on Architect, kind of going back to the main page. Over here, there's going to be a prompts area. And in here, you can see a lot of different prompts as well that can be brought up as well. So I've got a bunch of user prompts. I can go into system prompts as well. And we'll go back into this one and then look for my one. So main greet. Yeah, there it is. So that's the main greeting. Sitting there, ready to go. So let me go back to the flows. All right, let's go back into general inbound. Okay, so we've now got this operating in such a way to where we can view it from here to get to the main prompt audio, but also we notice that really this is kind of brought up as English, United States, EN/US. What if we were to do things in Spanish? So what we're going to do is go over here to the flow where it says supported languages, and we'll go ahead and add one. So I'm going to throw in, let's do Spanish United States. So that's going to throw in another line item here. We can still default to being English. And if we want to change up some of the voices, we can. And so we can manage kind of what languages are going to be existing in this flow. Now, when we've just added this in, we immediately see a red up here. And how could that be? We haven't really even done anything. It just adds support for Spanish. Well, that creates an issue for us because over here in the play audio, this prompt file does not have anything for Spanish. So we're actually not able to publish this flow without coming in for this prompt and putting something there. We don't even really use it yet. It's not even in a section where we've asked the caller to enter in if they want Spanish. This is just the way that the call flows are built. It can become very annoying when you are building out a flow and you've got a lot of different menus and different directions that you might go in based off of them entering Spanish. Maybe we have a different menu for our Spanish speakers that doesn't have as many options. So we're kind of in a different part of the flow at this point where we may even use different prompts. That can be very annoying because then we really just need a Spanish version of the prompt and not really in English. But the way that this is designed, the way Genesys Cloud operates, you're always going to need to provide something for it. So if you're using like talent agencies to have your audio sent to you, you don't need to have them do it. If you have the Spanish menu, you just need to really put the text-to-speech there. That's all, to at least get rid of this error. So even though we have no actual menu asking for Spanish, and we're just going to be defaulting to English, to get rid of this error, I actually have to put something there. So it will do the translation for you. So I'm just going to go ahead and put welcome to our flow down here as well. And that's okay. If I hit OK on this, we've now cleared the error and we're good to keep moving. Even though we don't have a prompt for Spanish, we didn't have our voice talent create one, that's okay. So we've got our audio prompt actually recorded for English. That's what's going to play over. But we are going to have that text-to-speech there, even though we may not even use this prompt on the Spanish side in a different part of the flow. So how would we do that? How would we actually get to the point of where we would use the Spanish leg of this prompt? Let's build a menu. So we had a menu in last time, but let's go ahead and create one down here that we're going to call the language menu. All right. And so I'm just going to go ahead in here and we'll create a prompt for this as well. So let's do add prompt. All right. Menu. Okay, I'm not going to leave a description for this one. So we now can then put something in here like, I don't know, let's say, for Spanish, please press 8 now. Okay, and as always, it's just get in the habit of just copying and moving that down. We can get our audio files uploaded maybe later, but let's just get rolling with some text-to-speech here. So for Spanish, please press 8 now. That's going to be our menu. And so what we're going to do is going to put some actions in here for the menu. So what I'm going to do is we're going to create a task down here. And then I'm going to create a secondary task as well. Task. Yeah, let's do that. Okay. So this is going to be our no selection. Now, no selections, you always have to put something. I'm going to go ahead and put 9 down here. And so this is going to be our English. Well, actually, let's make our no selection just like something like, I don't know, pound. Let's do that. Okay. So English. And we don't really need to do anything except for right now. We're going to maybe use this secondary task in a minute to actually play our audio So good thing we created this from last time. So let me go ahead and move in our prompt over there. Play audio. And we're going to add in that main greeting. Cool. Okay. So we got the main greeting in there. Let's go ahead and rename this task as well. And so now we've got kind of seeing, oh yeah, let me make sure we've got that linked to that 8. Boom. Okay. Okay, and switch it up because I chose the menu pound, and so that moves it to the end of the list. But Spanish is there as 8, but we're going to make the language menu, the default choice, be English. So that's going to put the English in bold as being the default if we time out on that. So we've got that rolling, and then what I'm going to go ahead and do is, on English, we'll do that one first since it's going to be a little bit more simple. I'm going to go ahead and do a transfer. And we're going to transfer that down to the task. What am I looking? Oh, I'm going to go to jump to reusable task. There we go. Okay, so we're going to do that secondary task. And then in Spanish, what we're going to do is we're going to perform a little language action here. So we can go to flow, and we're going to do a set language. And we're going to go ahead and do it to this Spanish that we do have supported in the flow. Now, this little message right here will say this change will take effect after the task ends. So if I was to do the play audio step right after this one, it's not actually going to switch to the Spanish. I need to kind of hop out of this. There might be some sort of kind of underlining logic as to why that needs to take place. But it's going to be okay because this is really just going to be a task built off of the menu. So it's going to be super kind of sweet and short, and we're going to jump it over to another task. So it's okay. But just know if I was to build a lot of logic right under this language, not going to take effect yet. So let's go ahead and do that. Jump to reusable task. Okay, secondary task, boom. Okay, so we've got these two options from this language menu. The number 8 option is going to send them over to the secondary task, and then the English one is just going to kind of move them along. So we're just going to go ahead and go straight to the task because we're already defaulting to English. So we've got that there. Now we're going to link it. So we already had this play audio up here. We can go ahead and get rid of that. And this disconnect, we're no longer going to just have this flow end, or this task kind of end our flow right here. So we're going to jump to a menu. Language menu, boom. Okay, so now we've kind of connected the dots of our different items now built within the flow. So we start up here at the main task. We're going to be setting a couple of the parameters we had from last time. Then we're going to move down to the language menu. So that's going to then jump us over into that reusable language menu area. And then we're going to hear that prompt, and it's just really going to say, hey, for Spanish, please press 8 now. Eventually, basically saying, hey, if you wait on the line, you're just going to continue on with English because we've made that the default choice. So let's check and see how many seconds that's going to be. Well, earlier in the last one, we did adjust the menu kind of defaults, and I like it to where we're just not going to really repeat menus. Can do that. You can increase that volume, and then menu selection being 3 seconds. So that essentially means is that we're going to sit here in this language menu and wait for 3 seconds in case the caller is going to press 8 for Spanish. Otherwise, we're just going to default them to the English option, which is technically pound from that menu. Kind of a silent option. And then we're going to move on to the secondary task. Now, when we've jumped out of the Spanish and we move down here to display greeting, we are now going to have that set language take effect for our actual play audio step. So then it's going to actually play this Spanish line here rather than the English. So that will take care of that piece for us. It makes prompt management just so much nicer. In older systems, you'd always have to link like every single language prompt, whether it was English and Spanish, and you kind of forget one and your flow might break because maybe you had Cantonese and you just kind of forgot a few different file links there. There is annoyances to what I mentioned earlier where once you have a flow support a particular language, you've got to provide something, at least some form of text-to-speech for everything, whether the flow will use that language within that area, of the flow itself or not. That can be super annoying. But getting over that, I would say overall it's much nicer to just kind of have everything managed from the perspective of once you have all of your prompts kind of set, up within its different files, and really you're just referencing a prompt by a name, main greeting, and that then contains English, Spanish, Cantonese. And then within your flow, you're just managing your logic based on, hey, they pressed 8 here. Let's go ahead and switch the language of the flow. Then everything else after that, you don't have to worry about every single little thing being linked. This prompt system kind of takes care of that and just makes sure that those particular audio sequences are going to be heard by the caller. So it is a great system overall. It's a little annoying in the design phase to just kind of have text to speech everywhere, even in non-used cases, but overall I think it gets the job done. Maybe if they just made it a warning instead of an error, but I digress. Okay, so now we've got the structure all there. We have our main task flowing to our language menu and then to our secondary task. All right, so really I think that's a pretty good start for what is going to be prompts. We've got everything set up here, and then also I mentioned some of the resources where we can see data that we had for attributes. Now I can go into the prompts area and see all the prompts that my flow uses currently. So I created that language selection menu one, and I can see where it's used as well as the main greeting. And then we can kind of see what we've got set up for those as far as the TTS is just sitting there by default, or we added in a prompt. A great way to kind of get to this piece as well. So, okay, we've got those saved. We kind of see that as all being like dependencies now that we have on the system, and we can go ahead and like build out other parts of this, change up, maybe a little bit more of the menu structure, build in other menus, so on and so forth with that. So we kind of got to see how that works in each of those objects. Play audio and like menus are mostly where you're going to use prompts. There are other cases, so I'll go into a little bit just to show it of what I was talking about with the transfer stuff. So let's say at the very end here, we're going to add a transfer to number. So this is like an external number just transferring away. So we'll just enter in something random here. So something like that. Okay, so as I've created this and I've already entered in the number, that's really all it needs. But I've got 2 warnings now. And that's because there is a pre-transfer audio and failed transfer audio. Again, you can just go ahead and type in here something like, you are being transferred. But I think you can handle this elsewhere. I just don't really always understand why you want to do this level. You can kind of start to lose things. I like to kind of have a little bit more of a visual layout with the way I use tasks. So I see a play audio step before transfer number, but hey, maybe there is other developers out here that just like to put it in this field for maybe a reason I've just kind of missed. But what we can go ahead and do here is instead of doing like a text to speech or even a failed transfer audio, which again, I'd rather kind of handle it on the failure step right over here, but hey, let's just go ahead and get rid of it. And then what you can do is go ahead and add that blank audio. So crank it down to as quick as possible. 100 milliseconds is very quick. Hard for humans to even notice that. So let's get rid of those and then do blank audio, and then it kind of defaults back to 100 milliseconds, and boom. Now we kind of have, it's kind of annoying that it just says like sequence is set now, but we've gotten rid of our warning messages. And so now we can like move forward, not really worry about the audio there, and now handle the audio separately. So we could then go ahead and, put in an audio here that says, failed to transfer you. And then with that, it'd be much just easier for me to see things. So I can see main greeting, transfer the number, and then if it fails, I go to this play audio step. I just kind of like to see things a little bit more of that visual layout. So we'll get rid of that. I don't always like doing those. I just go somewhere else and we kind of figure it out afterwards. Okay, so we've got those all set. We got the transfer number. So those are mostly the other areas that you'll see kind of like prompt referencing happen. Let's talk a little bit about expressions. So just to kind of get a little bit fancier, let's say up here, we have we'll just set a Boolean up here. So I got my update data. Let's add a bool. Let's see. let's just name it, I don't know, after hours. Okay. Now, what I can do here is go ahead and add in a play audio step. And I don't know. Let's let me add a prompt right now just to kind of show that we have our main greeting still. Okay. Now I'm going to add another prompt just to kind of visually show it for a second, and I'm going to add in some logic. Okay. So I'm going to then add another one. And so we'll say main greeting after hours. Okay. Thanks for calling us at night. All right. Well, let's keep it simple. So I'm putting that there. And there we go. So we have a main greeting and we have an after hours. So these are two prompts that, are now existing in the system. But I want to kind of conditionally play these. So one plays or the other plays based off of kind of a true false of whether we are in after hours. So we just kind of created a Boolean to just say we took care of that through some sort of scheduling earlier or something along those lines. So let me remove this for right now. And what we're going to do is we're going to add an expression. So this will be the first time we looked at expressions a little bit just in the first one by showing variables, and that's kind of where variables live, is in expressions. But what we're going to go ahead and do is open this up so we get a little bit of a bigger expression window to work with. So within here, to work with those at any time, you can go to this little function help menu and just kind of start to search expressions. If you're used to a lot of different coding functions, you'll kind of see a lot of stuff that's in your wheelhouse. There's a lot of different naming and just a little bit of differences with these expressions, so make sure you always look them up in there. So we're going to be doing like an if statement, so basically an if-then type deal. But the way the formatting works is if this evaluation is true, do the action in this part. Otherwise, basically do the action in the second part. So let's copy this in just to kind of show it here. But instead of this kind of 5 being equal to 3, what we're going to do is add in that Boolean value. So if true, let's do the first thing, and that's going to be our prompt. So let me get in here. And within this field, like right now, it was doing like audio TTS. We don't want the audio TTS one. There is another one, which is just to audio. And this is a function. But obviously not expecting string in the middle anymore, because that would be the to audio TTS. Now to audio is just going to be expecting an actual prompt variable type, and prompts can be referenced in that way. So what we would do is start to type prompt dot, and then main greeting. So after hours being true, that would mean we want our after hours one. So I'm going to go ahead and select this one, and then over here is we're going to switch this one up to audio. Got an error message because it's not a prompt, but we can change that. Prompt dot main greeting usual. So if true, play the audio prompt. That's going to be our after hours one. Thanks for calling us at night. Then if it's not true, then it kind of means regular day. So play the normal one. Play the main greeting. So now we have two files referenced in a one play audio step, to where based on a variable we could have either one of the prompts being played, which is great. That way allows for you to kind of create menus where you might have a little bit of different prompting in an after hours scenario versus a day scenario. I've done that quite a bit, and it just kind of keeps things much more clean. You can kind of reuse menus a lot more, so we don't always have to be building out for kind of different time scenarios of the day. And we can really, because a lot of times our menu options aren't necessarily changing, we just have a little bit of different prompting. So that makes things real nice. So now it kind of takes things away from a little bit more of a visual aspect when in the flow. So that sometimes is a little bit annoying, because now we just kind of see as like an audio sequence is set. So now to see what's going on here, Go over here, click on it, and then we kind of see our expression going on. So it hides a little bit of like the actual name prompt referencing, but we still do have it being listed in the prompt section. So even though we kind of created this wild expression and we kind of built in some logic, or maybe we even made that logic more complex with other kind of if-then statements, just because we still are referencing prompt dot, it is going to label that as a dependency for the flow. So we can still come back here, see what prompts, we do have reference here. So we need to go through and say hire new voice talent. We need to redo all the recordings. We can come in here, see which ones are being referenced, and then as a dependency, and be able to know that I've got to have main greeting as well as main greeting after hours recorded in order to replace those. So I love that referencing is there, because sometimes, like, we know how it is with variables, we kind of lose them. They can kind of get stuck in expressions, but I do really love that those dependencies will still come through. Now, a lot of times you don't always have the ability to do this if we'll get into data tables at one point of view, but sometimes with data tables, then we're going to have to reference kind of a variable string object that will then be our prompt referencing, and we can do that as well. It's a little bit trickier, so let's go through that now and show that for a second. So let's go in here to our fun little list of attributes, and we'll add another one. So this one, we'll say we've just kind of imported this from like a data table or some sort of dynamic source. So we're going to name this prompt play name. Okay, so when I create this, it's going to be a string, and I'm going to name it main greeting, same as what we have. Now what's going to happen is I've got this as a text sitting just in a regular string, so we don't really have any referencing to a actual prompt object in of itself. So what I'm going to do is we'll leave this audio step there too, just because it's some really cool logic we built there. Let's do a play audio. This time we're going to delete this. We're going to do an expression. Open up into our fun expression window again. And we can do a to audio again. But within here, we can't just put in like the task of prompt play name, because we're going to get an error. It's going to say, hey, that's a string. Even though, like the name is still there, kind of in a similar way that we did before with that other expression for the play audio. But because we've kind of got this like dynamic name that we don't always necessarily know what the name's going to be, maybe we kind of build this flow and somebody creates a prompt and they just kind of want it, very dynamically referenced. What we have to do is we have to use a find. And so there is a function out there. I'll find user prompt. And this is basically a search function based on a string value that we would give it. So then we can type in task.prompt play. All right, now we're rocking and rolling. So now what we have is two functions, one embedded one that basically is going to find a user prompt, which is what we create. We don't create system prompts. Those are hidden into the system. So it's going to find a user prompt based on a string value to then create a prompt object, which will then be our to audio to then allow us to actually have that audio take place within the play audio to step. So a little bit of an embed, a little bit of an inception going on here, but we got it working. So now we have it in there as an expression, can close it. So now whatever we feed into this flow, it may not necessarily be main greeting, might be main greeting November 2025, because we've got a very seasonal type greeting that somebody created and wanted reference. Now we can feed this into the flow, maybe via a more dynamic way than I'm showing here, but then our play audio is going to take care of it, because it's going to go in, find the user prompt, and then play it. Now, there's a little bit of sensitivity for the naming, right? We got to get the naming right. Otherwise, this is just not going to play. So it won't necessarily break your flow, but you do want to make sure you test it, because there is no kind of error checking here. And then the other things that does get annoying, right, is when we go look at our prompts, we really only see main greeting used in 2 places. And one of those is not going to be the action step that we had earlier to play the audio. So now this flow and this dependencies doesn't know where the dependency lies for this very kind of dynamic naming that I gave to this prompt. So just things to consider, pros and cons really to everything. Having such a dynamic way of playing audio prompts that just got entered in the system is great, but then you lose a lot of your dependency checks. So, a little bit of back and forth there. Okay, cool. So that kind of was, we went with a more very basic look at prompts and then just kind of inched our way through and getting to a little bit more complexity there. But yeah, for the most part, I think that's a good start to prompts. Yeah, I think we'll probably see them here and there as we do get into some of the other topics, as we do kind of create a little bit more complex menu builds and things of that nature. But for the most part, yeah. So, hey, this is Seth on call. Thanking you for joining.